say occur without your knowledge. Which we will think is a seizure, no? You do not know whether it is a seizure or a movement disorder. Unnecessarily anxious because the child has got repetitive movements. The manifestation of very severe diseases recognized early so that the treatment can be initiated early. These children become near normal and the child can be made as normal as possible.
Hello friends, I am Amarane, your podcast host, and welcome to the Academy of Pediatric Neurology presenting Neuro Podcast powered by Linux Laboratories Private Limited. Friends, in today's podcast, we had an amazing discussion with Dr. Mary Ipe, a senior pediatric neurologist from Kerala. And our topic was a movement disorder in children. Basically, movement disorder in children refers to abnormal or involuntary movements in the children. The word sounds okay, movement disorder. If you find the word movement and disorder, a disorder associated with the movement, and the what control the movement? The brain. And in pediatric group, there is certain conditions which arouse in the mind. Basically, in pediatric age group, certain conditions arise in the brain that leads to movement disorders. In this podcast, we discuss with Dr. Mary Ipe that which kind of conditions leads to movement disorders, how to diagnose those movement disorders, and if my child is suffering from movement disorders, what is the treatment options? We break down these all things stepwise in the podcast. Friends, don't miss this podcast. Watch till the end. You will precisely aware what actually the movement disorder is. So let's begin the podcast. But before, just subscribe this YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you will not miss any update in the future. So let's start the discussion with Dr. Mary Ipe.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Thank you very much for being in a podcast. Thank you very much. Our today's topic is the movement disorder in children's. Basically, these terms includes two words, movement and disorders. So, can you break down these two terms for us? So, what is movement and why there is disorders?
Movement refers to movement of our body, limbs, or head, or any part of the body. When you want to move a part of your body, the brain will send an electrical signal to your body, to your limbs, that will make you to move the limb to a particular target. Whatever you want to do, your body will be able to do it exactly with the exact force, the exact direction that you want. All this is being done in the fraction of a second by our brain and the system associated with it. However, this system can be deranged at times. And this derangement can be due to a pre-existing genetic predisposition to have this abnormal movement, or it can be due to an environmental factor like you have got an infection, or you had a brain trauma, or you had a stroke, something that has affected this system that produces normal movements in the body, and this can lead to abnormal movements without your knowledge and without predisposition. No, a child can be predisposed if he has a genetic problem.
Okay. So, ma'am, I mean, there are various centers in brain with some genetics or external factors that can be affected even by infections and all. And if those points get infected or the function of that points get hampered, and then movement disorders manifest. Am I right?
Yes, yes. See, as we speak, see, I am turning my head like that, doing like that. I am simply moving my hand without my knowledge. But all this is in context. This will emphasize what you're speaking about, what you're doing, etc. And all these extra movements that we make are not made voluntarily. We are not thinking, I will move my hand like this when I speak. But this happens due to a system in the brain. And when this system gets deranged, you get these movements that could normally occur out of context. They occur without your knowledge
Okay.
and out of context.
Yes. So, ma'am, uh, in children, uh, how we can identify, is there any warning signs and symptoms, and what is the earliest age, I mean at what month or what days we can identify those symptoms?
This can occur in the newborn period to a very old age. In the newborn child, you can have lots of abnormal movements. One of the commonest is benign sleep myoclonus. You find a movement in sleep in children where the limbs become loose like this, they're just like that for seconds. And this, the moment we specialist sees it, he or she knows that this is benign sleep myoclonus. And if the doctor is not too confident, you can do an EEG, which will be normal. So also in the newborn, you find that, see, when we move our eyes, they move yoked. They move in unison to either side or up or down. But in the newborn child, this yoking of the eyes is not really complete. Therefore, you will find that the eyes go down like you really get worried. No, even when you're a doctor, you see your child or grandchild with the eyes moving down like that, you get really worried. But this normally happens in the newborn, or it goes up, or one eye will remain like the other will move. This is because the development of the eye has not completed. Now, as you go into infancy, you find a number of normal movements like shuddering attacks. They do like this, like a bird fluttering. No, that is normal, seen in infancy, and this may go on up to 5 years. And in boys up to 5 years of age, you have this shuddering attacks seen soon after micturition. You hold the child for micturition. Soon after that, he'll shudder like a bird. And that, even when you know all this, you really get frightened when you see it. But as a doctor, you realize that the shuddering, you can console the parents that this is nothing. So also there are other normal movements in childhood that are actually normal. For example, some of these children may hold their head to one side. Like this is benign torticollis of childhood, which is supposed to be a migraine equivalent in children. So also because in the as we take our food, no, it goes in the stomach, it will not come back. But in the child, the sphincter between the esophagus and the stomach is not really developed. So when the child is given feeds, the acid in the stomach can regurgitate back at times, and this will produce a sensation in his mouth, and he'll go like that. These are all benign movement disorders. However, even in the newborn and in infancy, you can have very malignant movement disorders. For instance, you get, as I said before, they can get ocular guided crisis where the eyes go up due to neurotransmitter deficiency. And this has to be differentiated from the normal movements that you see in newborn children. The EEG, the MRI, the clinical history, and the clinical scenario will help you to find out whether it is an abnormal movement or a normal movement. And the disease state has to be recognized early so that the treatment can be initiated early and the child can be made as normal as possible.
Okay. So, ma'am, are there classification of movement disorders or the types of movement disorders?
Is movement disorders that are they're basically classified into hyperkinetic movement disorders and hypokinetic movement disorders. What we more often encounter are hyperkinetic movement disorders. Hypokinetic movement disorders, there's less of movement, as typically occurs in the adult in Parkinsonism, where the person will have no expressions on his face because there is no movement on the face. And in children also, you can have this hypokinetic Parkinsonian like features, especially in some infections that affect the basal ganglia. That is one of the main centers that control movement. And hyperkinetic movement disorders are many, and they include tics, stereotypies, chorea, dystonia, balism, athetosis, myoclonus, etc.
Okay. So, man, how doctors or pediatric neurologists diagnosis that this boy or girl is suffering from movement disorder?
Movement disorders, there is no test to find out whether the patient is having a movement disorder. It is only a diagnosis by Gestalt. or by just eyeballing the patient. No, by you see the symptom and you diagnose. And it is very important also, as some of the movement disorders can be the manifestation of very severe diseases like autoimmune encephalitis, which has a very grave prognosis. So it is your training, your experience, which makes you recognize these movement disorders. And there are movement disorders like tics, where the parents, the teachers, and the child be unnecessarily anxious because the child has got repetitive movements. But actually, you need not be so anxious. You can, and the doctor has to reassure the family that this is fine. Even you need not even have treatment for this.
Oh, so ma'am, once one diagnosed with movement disorder, what is the first line of treatment?
That is just like asking if a patient is diagnosed with fever, what is the first line of treatment? If a patient has fever, we have to find out what is the cause of fever. So just like that, movement disorder is just like fever. No, it's just a manifestation. So you have to find out what is the cause of the movement disorder and treat it accordingly. Now, first of all, when you have a movement disorder, you before finding out the cause, you have to find out what the phenomenology is. You have to classify it as either hyperkinetic or hypokinetic. If it's hyperkinetic, you find out whether it is tics, myoclonus, dystonia, chorea, etc. And after classifying the phenomenology, you try to find out what the cause is. To find out the cause, you know that some of these are usually benign, and so that you just leave it out. And but when a patient, for instance, has dystonia, dystonia is a sustained contraction of a group of muscles. And if a patient has dystonia, you think about all the different causes of dystonia in childhood. You look for other phenotypic features in the child. For example, if you think that the patient is having one of the common inborn errors of metabolism, Wilson's disease, which is eminently treatable, you look for something called KF ring, Kayser-Fleischer ring in the eye, which will give away the diagnosis. And also, you also see a lot of other phenotypic features, and also check for copper in the serum, and another substance called ceruloplasmin, which will help you to make a diagnosis. Now, if a patient has got disabling dystonia and the child is also having severe cognitive dysfunction, you think of a neuronal brain iron accumulation that is first of all diagnosed by magnetic resonance imaging of the brain, where you find the deposits of iron in the basal ganglia. So also Wilson's disease has got the typical MRI finding. There are so many. All these diseases have typical MRI findings, phenotypic features, and many of them have got treatment. Some of them, like neuronal brain iron accumulation, there is no effective treatment, and you will have to tell them that this is like. And of course, there is palliative treatment also. Something a surgery on the brain called deep brain stimulation can be used in patients who do not have respite with medications.
Okay, I have one question. Means during this thing, the seizure or the some of the symptoms of this movement disorder is, I feel like it like a seizure. So can we differentiate between seizure and the?
Definitely. Many a time when a patient comes, you do not know whether it is a seizure or a movement disorder.
Yeah.
Like I was saying before, you have treatment for movement disorder, but many of these movement disorders are not really treatable. But one should remember that seizures are more eminently treatable. And when a patient comes with a movement disorder, you should always, even though you're 100% sure it's a movement disorder, you must think, is it a seizure? It's a seizure. Is it a seizure? Because a seizure is very eminently treatable with medications. So, what you said is right. Even if it does not mimic a seizure, you have to look carefully to see whether it is a seizure. And by eyeballing, like I told you, we can make out whether it's a seizure or not. Even if you decide it is not a seizure, you have to take an EEG and rule out a seizure. Because seizures are more eminently treatable. And once you rule out a seizure, you again become more convinced that this is a movement disorder. Start thinking about what this movement disorder could be, like that.
Okay. And coming to the last segment of our podcast, do you have any real life example of any child who was suffering from movement disorder? I mean, he or she is suffering from movement disorder, and which kind of movement disorder is that? And he achieved something like normal people or more than that.
Certainly, certainly. In the earlier years of our training and also earlier years, nobody was aware of many of these movement disorders. I transiently mentioned what is called neurotransmitter disorder that used to go undiagnosed. Now we are all cognizant of what neurotransmitter disorders are. If a child comes with uprolling of the eyeballs and distorting posturing, in very early in life, and there is eye movement abnormality, etc., we all know now that it could be a neurotransmitter disorder, and by supplementing the neurotransmitters, these children become near normal. We are very many children who have become very normal. Then in the past, long ago, 20 or 25 years ago, there were children in our ward who came in comatose, encephalopathic, and whose eyes used to go up. They used to have dystonik posturing. We used to test for encephalitis, viral encephalitis. It was all negative. We used to continue to give medicines for viral encephalitis, and many of them used to die. Many of them used to get discharged home with all these movements, etc. But it was only from 2011 that the world came to recognize that the autoimmune encephalitis is a reality, and the antibody testing has come all over India now. We are able to check the antibody. We are all aware of this autoimmune encephalitis. That we can give immunomodulation for these children, and nearly all of them are surviving, and many of them are surviving without sequelae. And this is so great because before 2010, all of these children were really in a bad shape.
So, ma'am, last note to the audience, to the parents especially.
So, even though there are so many ominous movement disorders, tics are the most common movement disorders in children. 20% of school children are supposed to have tics. Tics means they have stereotyped involuntary movements like a facial grimacing, a shoulder tic, or an eye blink. This is tics, no? Tics are very benign. Actually, if you are in a Western country, all parents and teachers are well cognizant of the fact that tics are benign. Even though a child has tics, there is no problem. He can sit in class, he can listen, he can study. Some of these children have associated attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and some have learning disability. This has to be assessed, and you have to find out that and give the child assistance for that. Tics actually need not be treated, but in our country, what happens is the teacher will get angry with the child. Why aren't you stopping blinking? Even if after I've told you, why are you shrugging like this? And the parents also keep beating him, reprimanding him. And he also feels bad. Why am I having this? He will never understand. So what happens is 100% of children are being given medication because it is not possible for us to make them understand that you can live with tics and you can grow out of tics by the time you reach puberty. Only very few continue to have tics. It does not matter actually, but in our country we are giving medicines. And it's no problem if it is late, we can give medicines. But if everybody gets cognizant of the fact that tics are okay, you can live along with tics, we can even go without medication.
Very great. Thank you very much, ma'am, for this inspirational talk, inspirational podcast. If anybody, our viewers, they will see the podcast and they will precisely motivate that yes, okay, my child has movement disorder, not to worry. Dr. Mary ma'am's podcast is there. Yes, these points are, yes, I note down and I am not to worry now. So thank you very much, ma'am, for having here and attending the podcast. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.